Good morning, Internet. We are back. Uh, Alan Mueller and Bryce Barnett, and today we are reading The Logical Fallacy number 19, Argumentum ad Baculum. But first, how is Alan doing today?
Doing well, doing well. Hmm, been this morning's been all about just making sure my state's on point. Lots of reflecting, getting prepped for my event that's happening this weekend. So I'm in usually about 5 days prior to any event that I run. I'm dialed in, I'm ready to go. Things are starting to change. So I'm doing well.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Do you mind if I share what you and I talked about after the meeting last time?
Sure, absolutely go for it.
Cool. So, this was our first time doing this back on camera, and seeing each other was great. And Alan noticed. He said that the feeling was a little different, and so we explored that. And Alan, would you like to share?
Sure. Yeah, what I mentioned, so prior to for those, if you've been following along in the series or if you've just chosen to watch the ones that have video attached to it, the first few that we did with just phone calls. And Bryce and I have been friends for a really long time. I think so. I'm 29. How are you? 30, 31?
And how old are you?
Yeah,
Um, I'm 30 now.
30. So yeah, when we've been friends since Sarah, no, freshman, no, because it was when I got involved in theater, which was my junior year of high school. So junior of high school, it was like 2011-ish. So we've been friends now
Long
for,
ass fucking time,
what is that?
almost 15
10,
years, 14 years.
yeah, 14 years. So we've been been friends for 14 years.
Legit, like
And
half of our lives almost. It's coming
yeah,
up.
so and so there's been a sprint, a stint of time between Bryce and I where we haven't been talking, and so it been no beef or anything between us. Just we just hadn't connected, and so over the phone, it's only 1 degree of information. It's just voice, and so through that, it was very easy to be authentic, to be real, to be honest. Plus, I'm out walking about doing my thing. I'm able to distract myself with an alternative activity, making it easier to be authentic in the moment. Um, and then Bryce and I hop on camera and in my office here. So this is the space that I do coaching in. It's the space I do events in. It's the space that I do all this stuff in. And so the frame that this room is very much anchored to and attached to is a frame of authority. So it's like a frame of me being in charge, a frame of me being on top of things, etc. And
It's
so
not the place to be vulnerable.
yeah. Right. So that's what I'm getting to. So it's like it has that frame to it. And so being in space with Bryce, first of all, seeing him in person, as our conversations prior to this have been so personal, but then to now see face immediately it was like, oh, it felt more vulnerable because it's another level of intimacy, right? It's like I can see Bryce's facial expressions, I can hear, yeah, I can see him and feel him. So I'm like, okay, great. Now I can see and feel this human being through mirror neurons and etc. So it's like, well, that's hitting me in places that I didn't know was going to hit me. And then we're talking about very vulnerable information. And so I noticed in the last call there was just I wouldn't even say it was resistance. It was just there was conflict in the frames. It was like the frame I'm usually in this space is I'm in charge frame. And then here it's more of an authentic, vulnerable discussion frame. And so the transitioning from frame was a bit awkward. And I noticed in a conversation after Bryce and I were complete, I was like, I noticed that I wasn't being as totally vulnerable. I wasn't as comfortable being vulnerable and dropping in to a more authentic space. So the
I mentioned that possibly it was a subconscious thing because I don't think Alan intentionally chose to do that.
yeah,
And yeah, it was just because, where you are really impacts kind of like where your brain is at. And
yeah,
so we wanted to, um, we were even talking about like potentially doing this outside, but Alan wants to tell his subconscious to like, dude, be Alan Mueller, be the most authentic self you could be. So
yeah.
have you meditated before this, your most authentic self, or do you want to
Yeah,
do that?
I've no, I've done a series of priming, and so the for me and kind of like this is good for sharing with you, but also think with the audience too. It's like I think a lot of the times we are tempted to do is we're tempted to make excuses for, people very often and I'm not saying this is a negative thing, but they'll oversight, my trauma, my past, my patterns, my habits, my etc. And they'll use that as an excuse not to make a change. And for me, it's like, I could go outside and I could avoid this room and I could be like, oh no, it's that room. Or oh no, it's this, there's something wrong here. I have to
Magic feather.
right. And it's like no, there also can be like an acknowledging because like I thought about it from this frame. I was like, what would the gift be if in the room that I'm used to being in authority, I also was able to drop into authentic and vulnerable and real. Um, like how would that also impact the work that I do in this room otherwise? So um it's been this morning and there's just been a continuous up leveling in my own life outside of this is unrelated, but of really like stepping up my personal practices to make sure that I'm able to be as real, authentic, and on. Like what is being on, real and authentic? What does it all look together? And so that's a conscious choice in this one, and it will probably be increasingly so as we move forward. But yeah, that was what we talked about prior.
Very good. Thank you for sharing that.
Mhm.
And then, Alan, I texted you this, but I don't know if you were able to watch it on Friday, this at the time of recording. This past
Yeah,
Friday, I had a conversation with Aaron Ra, and it was quite the discussion.
I
Did you did
did.
you
So
watch it?
I started looking at it this morning, and
Okay.
I couldn't get past the beginning because there was this like just being real. There was this very awkward exchange between the two of you where you were like, you had McDonald's, like I don't eat McDonald's, and like it was just I was like, oh, this is so cringy, and I had to like I like did something else. So I will watch it at some point. It just I remember it was just like I was like, I'm gonna go do something else now. It's like example like The Office, the show The Office. I can't do it. I can't do that awkward humor. It just like it drives me up a wall. So I will watch it. I'll just skip the first part. I didn't know that was coming.
I love it. That's so funny. Yeah, well,
Like
because
he felt he felt so awkward. He just started laughing. He's like I don't know what to tell you, and just starts laughing. And I'm like, I gotta go.
yeah, I was just curious if he remembered our first conversation, so I wanted to use that as a segue because one of the reasons he didn't want to broadcast, we were talking about science communication, and he's one of the reasons that inspired me to make a science communication channel. Um, and he asked me the question early on in our conversation, like, is this being broadcast or no? And what I thought he meant was, is this being live streamed currently? And I'm like, no, it's not. But I did intend to post it as a video because I knew that he was recording.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, you're not broadcasting. Okay, good. And then he's like, honey, and she brings him McDonald's and he just starts like chowing down on McNuggets. And he's in Texas and I was filming at midnight my time. And so that's 2 a.m. So he ended up double booking me that day. And so he had to push me back and he could have just like been like, let's do a different day. But he's like, get it over with. And but oh my gosh, he was so tired and he probably ate McDonald's because that was probably the only restaurant open at night and
Right.
his wife didn't want to cook him anything that late. So
Yeah. Yeah.
totally makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I totally forgive him for not remembering that at all.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's totally fine.
Makes sense. Okay.
But oh, the reason I brought that up was because it's important to challenge our own um, our own beliefs, and that is essentially what the conversation was. Just to summarize, um, Aaron would often say that there is no possibility of a God, and I think he takes it a little too far by saying
Hmm.
that. And um, I used to not think so, but someone on Facebook proved me wrong, at least to my satisfaction. Because I essentially thought that having no possibility meant the same thing as not possible, which is a synonym for impossible. So by saying that there's no possibility is the same thing as saying that God is impossible. and I know he doesn't agree with that. So I uh, said that an accusation that I got for quoting him was equivocation. And so that was our discussion, whether that was equivocation or not. And do you mind if I spoil it, Alan, or do you not want it spoiled?
You can go ahead and spoil it.
Are you sure?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Um, I ended up having to concede. He was able to demonstrate that not possible and no possibility are two different things. One is a noun and one is an adjective. And because no possibility inside of it requires that a individual possibility needs to occur to say that something is has a possibility, and lack of possibility means that you are left with zero possibilities.
Got it. Got it.
And just for those of you that are like, Bryce, you never admit when you're wrong, I can, and I did. So like, just there you go. It's important.
Well, you admitted you've shared that you were like, oh, I was mistaken, or I was wrong many times in our relationship. So if anybody watches that, there's an anecdotal evidence here from a friend of who's known him for since 2011, 14 years, that he does in fact admit when he's wrong.
Thank you. All right.
Mhm.
So let's dive into number 14 on the master list of logical fallacies.
All right. Follow along in your books, kids, and your follow along in your Bibles. We're going
I don't know
into
if
verse.
Alan saw our first two videos. As of right now, our first two videos are public. On the
Oh,
screen,
nice.
it will have the entire fallacy and the whole description. So they can just
Oh,
read the
nice.
screen.
Sweet. Well, read the screen. Open up your Bibles to verse 19 in in the Master of Logical Fallacies. Here we go. Argument ad baculum. Argument, quote, argument from the club. Also argument ad baculam. Interesting. So it's spelled differently in different places. Argument from strength, muscular leadership, non-negotiable demands, hard power, bullying, the power play, fascism, resolution by force of arms, shock and awe. All right. The fallacy of persuasion, or proving one is right by force. Violence, brutality, terrorism, superior strength, raw military might, or threats of violence. Example, give me your wallet or I'll knock your head off. Or, quote, we have the perfect right to take your land since we have the big guns and you don't. This also applies to indirect forms of threat. Example, give up your foolish pride, kneel down and accept our religion today if you don't want to burn in hell forever and ever. A mainly discursive argument at Baculum is that of forcibly silencing opponents, ruling them, quote, out of order, blocking or censoring or jamming their message, or simply speaking over them or speaking more loudly than they do. This last a tactic particularly attributed to men in mixed gender discussions. Interesting. I wonder where they got that data.
So I remember when before when Alan and I had our calls, we would spend a significant amount of time on these fallacies just because we allowed it to impact us so emotionally.
Yeah.
And last time, while indeed I will admit we were incredibly efficient, we didn't allow, I would say, more of our subconscious to do a little bit of a deep dive on it. And so I want to invite Alan's subconscious to take this one in and feel all the feelings that ought to come out because of this one, because this one is pretty harsh.
Yeah. What comes up for me on this one is like, so I don't, to me, the biggest word that's coming through for me is like dominance or like power play. And I've never been one to utilize that. Like I've never been one to use power and dominance, and I think a part of it with like how I grew up, there was, because of the dynamics in my family unit, there was a lot of like shaming and attacking uh towards masculinity or power, dominance, high energy charge, traits that are typically associated with cisgender males. Those traits were heavily shamed, and so and reinforced and all these kinds of things. And so for me, I very much like, um yeah, from an early age, like power playing to me was not something that I was familiar with and often actively avoided. But it as I was reading it, it immediately brought up feelings from a past relationship that you and I have discussed in the past, where this
I mean,
is,
you've talked about it on here. You just didn't say who it was. So
yeah, yeah,
if the
yeah,
audience is
yeah,
following along, they remember that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So that from a past relationship, that was very normal. It was a normal behavior, that essentially the person, it was a subcontract in that relationship where the person who is the loudest, the most abrupt, the most hurtful, whoever can muster up the most intense comeback is the one that's going to be right, because then yeah, it was a weird state of affairs. Like I remember like one of the traits that this person had at the time was winning at all cost, and that included hurting people. It was like, if I can say something that's going to damage your feelings, your hurt, and the jab is so hard and so intense that it causes your nervous system to enter shock because of how intense it was. And yeah, I remember being on the receiving end of this one a lot, and it was like, um and I want to be clear as I talk about this, like I want to be clear that I'm not saying that in any way, shape, or form I'm innocent. I'm also not saying I'm a victim of anything, or that I've been, yeah, I'm not claiming any of those things. Um, because there was also a time in that relationship where, after 4 years of experiencing a certain behavior, there was a part of me that was like, okay, I'm done. You know, it's like I'm done being kicked in the face. I'm going to start kicking too. So it's like I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm being victimized by something, but what I can say is that, um, definitely am familiar with this one a lot, and yeah, it brings up those memories.
This one kind of reminds me of when we were in school and like people would get into an argument and a lot of the kids didn't have the vocabulary to express their thoughts. And so it would just end up with, oh, you think I'm wrong? Well, let's meet by the flagpole and I'll just beat you up. Like, oh, well, I guess that proves you're right then. That's what it is. Just meet me by the fucking flagpole, buddy.
Yeah, yeah,
There are, as we've mentioned before, a lot of fallacies that are kind of like deviations of other ones. There's a lot of fallacies that are under the umbrella of this one. So this one actually covers a lot of ground, and we're gonna
yeah.
eventually dive into more specifics involving this one. But let's move on.